It's so frustrating to play this team because they foul a ton. You know, they really do. They foul all the time. And then, you know, you can't really touch Shai.
There's a lot going on in that very short clip from Minnesota Timberwolves head coach Chris Finch. When he says the OKC Thunder foul a lot, he's not lying. They're called for the third highest amount of fouls per game in the league. But did he mean they foul a lot and get away with it? Well, we're going to get to that in a second. But first we need to pick apart what he said about Shai Gilgeous Alexander. It's possible you're unfamiliar with his game, although with the push to anoint him this year's MVP, it's getting harder to find people who don't know what these three letters mean when put together. He's leading the league in scoring and putting on a show of tough mid-range shot making on a nightly basis. Plus, his hesitation game is unparalleled as one defender just isn't enough to prevent him from stopping and starting his way to the basket for layups. Add to that a career high in three-point attempts with a league average success rate, and you've got yourself an unstoppable force. Now, let's get to what Coach Finch was talking about.
And then, you know, you can't really touch Shai.
And let's go through the fouls SGA drew against Minnesota in the back-to-back games they just played. First off, I love that Ant and SGA guard each other. Not only is Ant hand-checking, which impedes the progress and is by definition a foul, he leaves his hand in the cookie jar and holds SGA's left arm down as he's trying to shoot a pull-up. No complaint from Edwards as he knows that's an easy one. Here's Terrence Shannon Jr. picking him up on the crossover, and he also sticks his hand into the cylinder of SGA and makes clear contact across the left arm. This type of undisciplined defense is what's going to get you fouls, not the fact that all SGA is doing here is pulling up off one leg to throw the timing of the defense off. It's hard to imagine Shannon is confused why it's a foul, but he is, and Coach Prigioni excitedly tells him just to keep his arms up. He gets caught on an island on this play, and it's made all the more frustrating by Shannon's reaction afterwards. I mean, come on. His right hand reaches completely in and across SGA's body, then rakes down on the left arm as SGA goes into the shooting motion. I suppose people could get upset with this because of the footwork. This isn't the conventional left-right into a jump shot that we're used to, but that's what makes SGA so hard to guard. And let me make this clear. There's nothing in the rules that say a ref has to ignore illegal contact across the arm because the offensive player quick pulled from 18 feet. Here's one that could make Wolves fans upset as it appears no one touched him on this drive since the release was clear of any defenders. But watch carefully, and trust me, the trail official who called it did, and you'll see Nickeil Walker-Alexander hit him on the head from the held defense position. It gets worse. From this angle, you see the ref pass up another reach-in by Jalen Clark with clear contact on the wrist that could easily have been called a foul as well. So is this what Finch means by not being able to touch him? I'm also concerned about Walker-Alexander's response from clear illegal contact. Can you hear me shaking my head? And over on thehellsite.com, this post got around, and think about this. He's helping to foment more hate for a player based on a call where he completely missed the obvious contact. Think before you tweet. It's really astounding to me that defenders continue to overtly put their hands all over SGA on his drives. This could be called a foul up here, but the refs have to decide advantage-disadvantage, so they let it go. But Clark keeps his right arm up and inside SGA's cylinder for yet another obvious raking down across the left forearm. The refs would get in trouble from the league if they didn't make this obvious call. Maybe Finch is right, you can't touch SGA, but certainly not if your definition of touch is manhandling him across the lane. Why isn't Finch telling his defenders to stop putting their inside arm across SGA's chest? And the refs didn't call this touch at the beginning of the contact, so they're most definitely letting defenders touch him, just not do chin-ups on his arm as he's pulling up for a shot. Here's another relatively easy call on a pull-up three-point shot. There is a rule that allows contact to the hand on the release, otherwise known as the high-five rule, but Clark clearly makes contact lower than that on SGA's forearm, and that's another easy call. More evidence that the refs will allow defenders to touch SGA as Edwards is doing his best to impede his progress while still moving his feet. This one was tough because we didn't have a good angle and didn't get a replay, but Ant wants the ref to call an offensive foul. That's interesting, and we can see Shai get his right elbow up towards Ant's face. Hard to tell if it made any contact, but it does appear there's body contact down below, but let's just say this is the first call where the Wolves have an argument. This was funny. I think Ant was getting frustrated by the score, so he just shoves SGA to the floor for an easy call. You definitely can't touch him this way, Coach Finch. In the first game, Timberwolves fans got irate over this call, feeling like SGA had nailed Mike Conley in the face for an offensive foul. But that's Not what happened. SGA had a big advantage with Conley making contact with both arms at the midsection, and he simply pulls up, keeping his arms inside his cylinder and not making any type of overt jumping motion into Conley. He simply jumps straight up as he's allowed to do, and it's incumbent on Mike Conley to avoid illegal contact. Unfortunately, it was with his chin, but it doesn't negate the foul for not being in legal guarding position when the contact occurred. Here's another example of foul merchant accusations. Why? Because he utilizes expert footwork to quick release a jump shot, catching Edwards with his arms completely across Shai's body, the illegal shoulder-to-shoulder contact, and again, the refs have no choice. If Edwards would just keep his arms lateral, I bet the shoulder contact could get ignored, but not when all of this is put together. Sometimes a problem can arise when a coach who complains too much about calls then influences how his players react as well. Edwards clearly doesn't like this call, but I just can't see how he'd do anything but raise his hand and acknowledge all of this contact has to be a foul. I hope it's clear by now that there is very little standing to credibly argue that Shai is getting a lot of phantom calls. While it might not be fun to be an opposing fan while OKC is handing you another loss, it can be really fun when you download and play Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus, it's guaranteed. Here's your chance to use the knowledge you get from my videos to choose whether Steph Curry will hit a bunch of threes against a bottom-ranked defense, or SGA will get a bunch of free throws against a foul-prone team. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports takes into real money all season long. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. What is fascinating about OKC is that you normally hear coaches preach not to foul on defense, but the Thunder are in first place in defensive rating and it's not even close, yet they fouled more than all but 2 other teams in the NBA. The key to their defense is active hands, and it seems clear that the Thunder coaches have taught their players to strip the ball as much as possible and have your hands in the cookie jar at all times. And that's a gamble they're willing to take, as the referees can't call a foul on every play. It also helps when you have 4 players in the top 11 in steals per game. These guys have some of the strongest and quickest hands in the league, and when you unleash them to reach in, they're going to cause a lot of havoc to an offense. I know it might not seem fair, and you might even acknowledge that these are all legit fouls on SGA, but then say, well, so-and-so doesn't get those calls. And the only thing I can say to that is, each drive to the hoop is its own separate play, and there are a myriad of reasons why some fouls don't get called. The chief one is that the ref simply wasn't in a position to definitely see the illegal contact. And then you have to take into consideration the reaction by defenders when the contact is completely obvious. If a player is so willing to argue a call that both of them know occurred, like this multiplayer, multi-foul drive when Nas clearly waxed SGA's wrist, it's hard to have credibility when they get in the ref's face for a legitimate no call. Shai drives more than anyone in the league. He's a better finisher than just about anybody in the league, and if you're not going to foul him or bring a second defender, he's most likely going to score. That's how good he is. So Coach Finch is right that they foul a lot, but it actually helps them as they reach in with fundamental principles of being square to their man, on balance, so that if they don't get the ball, they won't get beat that easily. And they're more than willing to trade stops and turnovers for the occasional foul call, even if it is from relatively high volume. The other huge benefit from all this reaching is that it seems to drive their opponents crazy.
Just shoot right over me like all those.
The ability to drive the offense to distraction based on how you're playing defense is invaluable, as the mental aspect of the game is as vital as anything else, especially when you get to the playoffs, where referees tend to give even more leeway to the defense.
Edwards' hard drive, block.
So the way they've built this defense will be rewarded even further once they're part of a do-or-die 7-game series on the way to the NBA Finals. So my suggestion would be to stop complaining about the defense, keep your team on a more even keel, and figure out how to prevent your defenders from foolishly reaching in when SGA shoots the basketball. In Coach Finch's defense, they figured this out just enough to come back from a huge deficit and win this game in overtime. But he should be concerned, as the Thunder has been able to build significant leads in 3 of their 4 games, and I don't know if there's anyone in the West that can both shut down SGA and overcome their handsy defense.